And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Bud Elliott. That's Danny Kanell. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 Tailgate, where we're just firing off win totals because that is right. It feels so good. Win total season is here today. We're going to do half of the Big 12 alphabetically. That's everybody Arizona through Iowa State. Wednesday, we will do the rest of it, starting with Kansas and Kansas State all the way to West Virginia. Next week, then all of a sudden, we're just going to keep it rolling. ACC, same pattern. The week after that, SEC. The week after that, Big 10. And then what's that? Check your watch. Win totals locks, week 0 locks. Then the season's here. Thursdays, of course, will be a time for us to dig into a lot of news that might pile up through the week, as well as your questions in the big old bag of mail. If there is stuff right here at the top, I think that we will, of course, address it. We've got a press conference coming up at 1 p.m. Eastern time. Now, we're going to discuss Colorado from the win total perspective in terms of the team on the field, the way the schedule plays out. But we're also going to have an update from head coach Deion Sanders, the medical team there. Danny, I guess what's on your radar? What's your antenna saying? Is this going to be a, hey, Coach Prime's all good to go? Is this going to be a, hey, we've got some limitations here? That it might be one of the biggest stories of the day, or it might be just a nice positive update. How are you sort of gauging what we're going to hear from Boulder a little bit later?
I have absolutely no idea what we're going to get, but as is the case with Colorado, as we since day one, I kind of am ready for anything. I think there are a lot of options that are on the table. I know there's rampant speculation and people saying maybe he retires, maybe he steps away. But then I'm like, well, why did he go to Big 12 Media Day and talk about the team and, talk about his quarterbacks? And it looks like he has a plan. The videos that I saw from December looks like he was going through something very serious. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's a part of the announcement. And if that's the case, I just hope and pray that he gets back healthy. I think he's great for college football. That's my takeaway. I hope we don't lose him, whether retirement or whether to, health issues, whatever it is. I think he's great for the game. I hope it's good news rather than the alternative. But I honestly am kind of ready for anything. It might be a, hey, I'm cleared.
That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah. That would be the best case situation, but I honestly have no idea.
I think that's what we're all hoping for, right? Is that Deion is, cleared from, whatever he was dealing with. Maybe they'll explain what that was or not, or, maybe, hey, he's on the path to being, really good. I think almost anything could be announced. You'd ask, why would he do Big 12 Media Days if he wasn't coming back? I think there's a couple questions within that. One, maybe he thought he was coming back and, maybe he is, right? Or, maybe he thought he was coming back and then, hey, that was actually a lot and isn't coming back. We don't know, which is why we'll find out there, at 1. I mean, I was thinking last night, of all the possibilities he could announce, because I knew we would discuss it on today's show. And I also thought, what about a Roger Clemens type situation where when he went to the Astros, hey, I'm still that guy, but I'm not doing road games or something like that, right? Maybe travel, is an issue. That's a grind in any job that requires a lot of travel. Danny can tell you, the season, kind of gets up on you. So I don't know. We'll see what he'll announce. I think a lot of us thought that his plan all along was to bounce after his sons left, and his actions don't indicate that was the plan.
Sure.
Right? He did, stay there at least. I know he hasn't been around this offseason, but
recruiting Juju Lewis, trying to get keeping Jordan Seaton there, the players that are going to extend when you had your sons on the roster, being committed to that was a turn that I think Colorado, the university, which put all this money into Coach Prime and had a new press release for their contract extension, they're excited to see that he's planning to stick around for the future as well.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just saying, I don't think this is some kind of long plan deep fake. I think he really had a health thing, as Danny said, and we hope he's healthy enough to coach.
Yep. Speaking of health issues, Bud, I know we've got a couple of injury updates that you got your attention for. We'll be tackling the SEC here in a couple of weeks, but a couple teams getting some not great news on the injury front.
Whoa. Did we just lose Bud? Did he just freeze up for a sec?
Budbot? Do we need to unplug him?
It wasn't the mute.
Don't hit the button. Don't hit the button on him. Yeah, Tom's on the Tom does have he'll be deep in the lab right now working on
There
his.
he is.
All right, you back?
Got him back.
Yeah, that was kind of weird.
Okay.
You guys got me now?
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, so Luke Haas, transfer tight end from Arkansas, who transferred to Ole Miss. He's going to miss most or all of the season. So to me, that is a blow for Ole Miss. They played a lot of 2 tight end sets last year. I know they're very high on their receivers, but still, if you lose a guy like Luke Haas, you have to play 2 tight ends. That means you're having to move your 2 up to 1, and you're having to move your 3 up to 2. So that was a guy they were like really excited to get, and one of the better tight ends in the SEC. So I do think that's a legitimate blow for Ole Miss and their chances to make it back to the college football playoff, which they're fairly heavily favored to do because their schedule is a cakewalk. So, I that's something to monitor there, certainly for the Rebs.
Would you say that? And look, I love there are people that have been with us since day one and understand this, but when we get this kind of update and around fall camp at the beginning of fall camp, and there will be more. Would you say that Luke Haas is a changes the way a coin flip looks, or like maybe depending on how the rest of the depth is, like certainly no tight end is going to be a half game or a quarter game adjustment on your projections, but is that probably a soft factor that sort of like has you lean in one way or another?
I think so. It also, I think you make a mental note of it and you say, okay, if they lose another tight end in the season, they either have to change the way they play because there's no practice squad in college football. I mean, we have the 105 now, but like, you don't have 105 worth of payroll and rev share and NIL. So like most of these guys still can't play lick. I mean, most of these teams are paying only 40 or 50 guys for a reason. So, the bottom like 60 in your roster are still like very young developmental guys or guys who you really don't want to see in a ball game. So if Ole Miss did lose another starting tight end here somehow, which can happen, like that's a position that gets banged up, certainly. I mean, they all do, I guess it's football. Then we'd have to monitor, like, are they still trying to run a lot of double tights, or are they going to switch to run a little more, 11 or even 10 personnel?
That's where I think when Bud just hit on it, short yardage goal line situations, when you would pull in an extra tight end or even go 3 tight ends in one set, like especially when you have an offensive mind like Lane Kiffin who can exploit that a lot of times, use your different weapons. That's when I think it's time to keep an eye on it for a depth perspective. But I also think that's where in those situational places, which are so key, we don't talk enough about them because we see the scoring numbers or the total offense and the bigger numbers, but a lot of that's situational with a tight end that comes, when it's really a red zone target. And for a young quarterback like Austin Simmons making, his first year as the starter, that tight end is such a security blanket to rely on in some of those critical situations. So something to keep an eye on. It's not really changing my mind on Ole Miss, like you said, but just something to kind of keep an eye on.
Yeah, I would say that can Ole Miss run the ball in short yardage situations? Is this going to be an offense that the way that they've reloaded the wide receiver room is going to be great when the field is big, and then when the field shrinks, are they going to be able to get it done? I know they bring in Diego Pounds from North Carolina, a couple other transfer additions on the offensive line. So getting nasty up front is going to be something where, once again, Ole Miss is relying on a lot of new blood to be able to gel pretty quickly.
They definitely think they upgraded at tackle. I also know they think that they are better at receiver this year overall, and they think they're a lot better at running back. So
they should be deeper at receiver, because too many times they were just hitting that easy button where they're like, oh my gosh, okay, we've got Jackson Dart, like we've got an amazing one-on-one wide receiver. And I feel like
Harris,
again, like I'm pulling this just sort of not with a great specific reference, but getting down to the goal line. It's like, why don't we just throw 3 fades to Trey Harris and see if he can pull down one of them? Can they have a counter punch to it? Something to keep an eye on for sure.
I do think I wonder like how much better are their backs this year? We'll have to monitor that for sure. I know we got win totals to get to here. Not Emmanuel. Sure. What's his name? Ismail Cisse, the Stanford transfer at receiver who transferred to Arkansas. He's likely out for the season as well. So that was, I think, a weight room injury on his wrist. Required surgery, I read. So, yuck. But I mean, Arkansas's receiver room was already pretty sketch, and that is another piece that they've lost. So, in what I think is probably very likely the last season at Arkansas for Sam Pittman, that's a hard way to start the year.
Yep, 100%. Well, listen, you're right. The tailgate's calling for it. So it just brings me great joy. I mean, this is like fall camp season. This is when we just get on that sprint to the year. So I ask, gentlemen, you all ready to count them up?
Let's do it.
As much as I think it's the under is a safe play, like I can't even.
Count them up. Count them up. How many games are going to win this fall?
I can't fathom 8 wins.
How many games are going to win this fall?
I just can't. I don't see it. It's not on there. It's not the schedule I'm looking at. Unless there's another schedule somewhere.
And we begin our 2025 win totals in the Big 12 with the Arizona Wildcats. Yikes. Not a great season last year. They're looking for a bounce back. They've tried to restock where they can. They still have their very talented, if diminutive, quarterback. The Wildcats open up the season against Hawaii at home, then Weber State, and then comes the gauntlet just a little bit. You are Kansas State at home on a Friday, off week early in the season in week 4, at Iowa State, Oklahoma State, BYU, Houston, second off week, and then Colorado, Kansas, Cincinnati, Baylor, and at Arizona State. As always, we are pleased to bring you the odds, which are subject to change, as always, from FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can make every moment more. At FanDuel, you can get the Arizona win total at 5.5 wins. Nice little over -110, under -110. Danny, I'm going to let you get first crack at this for the Wildcats. But where are we leaning on this one?
So this one I actually feel possibly could show up on a win locks pod potentially. Because remember, these are all just leans, right? These are not locks. These are all kind of what direction we feel like we're going. And just so you guys know the exercise, how I did it, I went through each schedule, kind of went down, put down wins, losses, put down 50-50 games, like tried to do that. And then when I came up with a number, then went and found the win total on FanDuel and was like, all right, how do I stand? How far off am I? Most of the times I was right around there. This was one I was not. I'm going under. Like, and pretty convincingly under was where I kind of felt. You mentioned the gauntlet of a schedule. And there's a team that I don't know if we're doing them today or not. We are doing them today that I am more bullish on than most. But even like the Oklahoma State game at home becomes like a must-win game. And I did give them a win there. But even with that and like another 50-50 game, like the
Houston
Kansas
game,
at home,
like after that, you know, that's another one where you're
that might have given it away for me. You're just blowing up my spot there on one of the teams I think is going to have a big turnaround year in the right direction. I had that a loss for Arizona. Sure. So I had them under. I had them closer to 3-9 than I did 4-12, but I came in with 4-9, or excuse me, 4-8. Like after I kind of was like, all right, they can't be that bad. I just think the schedule's brutal. I'm not a huge believer in Noah Fafita having a big bounce back year. And honestly, I kind of worry about Brent Brennan after this season. Like I would not be shocked if it's a 2-and-done type scenario.
Which of these is the non-con game?
Oh,
it's Kansas State, right?
I believe so.
1 second. What are you trying to come up with, like an lowest conference? Are you going to give me a conference win total under just to double down on it?
Well, no. Joey in the chat had mentioned that another book had fewest conference wins bet, and Arizona is the favorite at plus 275. That's got to be among the Big 12 teams, by the way, because there's no way that Arizona is favored to win fewer conference games than like a Mississippi State, which is probably going to win 0 or 1, right? Like that. I'm going to go over here, actually, for Arizona. In a league in which nobody recruits at a high level, I am a big believer in betting things back towards the middle because I think a lot of this comes down to, like, how's your team chemistry year to year? And, like, I don't think anybody has very many real difference makers in this league, which is part of the reason why it's so exciting, right? All these games typically come down to the wire, and Arizona did not come down to the wire last year. I think they had some cultural stuff they had to get fixed there in Brent Brennan's first year. We'll see if they did. Obviously, they made some coaching changes. I mean, I look at this road schedule, like at Iowa State, at Houston, at Colorado, at Cincinnati, at Arizona State. Some of those are not easy, but they are not particularly like daunting. Like I don't see like at Utah, I don't see like at Kansas State. You know, at Arizona State's tough, but you literally are in state there. So, and I think their chance of clipping like a Kansas State, Oklahoma State, BYU, Kansas, or Baylor at home, like can they get 2 of those 5? I believe they can. So I'm going to go over here slightly. Like Danny said, I don't know how many huge edges there are in the final week of July, but I lean slightly over here.
Oh, I think it's a huge edge under. Are you kidding
All
me?
right.
Brett Brennan
I'm
fired
with you.
by November 1st. Danny, I like you. I was like, all right, you can get off like Hawaii, Weber State, and then I could really see it spinning out of control. I could, you talk about culture. This is a roster that just got absolutely gutted when Jed Fish left, and you held on to Noah Fafita and you held on to Teteroa McMillan. But I mean, what did it get you? I mean, it still got you a year where wins were really, really hard to come by deeper into the season. This is the one where in the domino of the way that I've put together all of my projections for the Big 12, which, kind of similar to Danny, the win-loss toss-up analysis that I've talked about before, this is the domino that would mess me up. If Arizona is good, then all of my Big 12 projections are going to be, skewed by a little bit, just because there are so many teams where I have given them the Arizona game. I mean, I'm talking Kansas State, Iowa State, Kansas, your Cincinnati, Baylor, Arizona State. I think all those teams are going to be significant favorites in those games. So I'm under on this one as well. I say no bowl for the Wildcats here in 2025. And if it gets bad, I would not be surprised if Brent Brennan is part of the coaching carousel this year. How many games are going to win this fall? Well, coming up on the other side, we turn our attention to the reigning Big 12 champs, the Arizona State Sun Devils, plus Baylor, BYU, Cincinnati, Colorado, and more. Next.
Name's Conrad Harrigan, family man. And if you cross my family, well, you'd better pray.
Mobland, new series streaming March 30th on Paramount Plus.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast, I just saw a nice little, for those watching on youtube.com/cover3, and we appreciate you, nice little Mobland. We're in on Mobland, right, Danny?
So good. Yeah.
It's
awesome.
good.
And that was season 1's in the book, and then new season might be coming up soon. Okay, I gotta add that. Add that to the watch. Last chance. I mean, I don't really do NFL preseason that much, so this is kind of the last chance to get in any shows. All right, count them up. Turning our attention to Kenny Dillingham and the Arizona State Sun Devils' wildly successful season last year, as they did make it all the way to the top of the conference, to the college football playoff. And now they're going to enter the year with some expectations. At FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can make every moment more, their win total is set at 8.5, over +104, under -128. But I'll let you get first crack at this one. How are we looking at Sam Leavitt and a lot of players that are back, but certainly some to replace from the Big 12 championship team?
So I am going to go over here on Arizona State. This is one of the very few times in this conference that I'm going to be taking one of the top guys over. But I do think they have a couple like actual next level difference makers on this team. Most importantly is quarterback. Most of the guys who I respect in like the very early mock draft space are very high on Sam Leavitt. He got a lot of positive reviews for like the various quarterback camp stuff he did this summer as a college counselor. He makes some really high level throws, and I think he has some room for growth. I don't really trust Mississippi State. You could tell me like Mississippi State, played them hard for a couple minutes last year, and then obviously Texas State had them beat, honestly, in San Marcos. But like the road schedule here is tricky, but I do want to point you guys to the timing of the final stretch, and I think this is fairly important. West Virginia is going to run that unbelievable Rich Rod tempo. How much depth does West Virginia really have? How much quality depth do the Mountaineers really have that late in the season? That's also not in Morgantown. They come to the desert. I could see some dead-legged Mountaineers there in Tempe. At Colorado, like at that point, depending on what you guys pick, Colorado may or may not be eliminated from bowl contention. If this is the game that they get to play after Colorado doesn't make a bowl, especially if the thing goes sideways, we're going to have a lot of speculation about is Deion finally quitting, blah, 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 if he doesn't already today. We'll see. Obviously, we hope that he doesn't. You're going to have a lot of guys thinking transfer portal. Where am I going next year? So I like the timing of that game if that season goes how I think it might go. And then if y'all are right about Arizona, then that's a major quit factor game right there. And those guys are all thinking portal. So I think that those 3 games to finish the season, due to the timing of it, assuming Arizona is still in the hunt for the Big 12, I like how that sets up here. I think they probably have the best quarterback in the Big 12, especially as far as like making big boy throws. So I will go over on Arizona State here, but the road schedule is certainly a bit scary. At Utah, at Baylor are not easy.
Yeah, the 3 road games in conference are brutal for them. Not to say they couldn't win, one or multiple of those games. I'm on the over as well, but I'm not picking them to repeat. Like, I'm not saying they're just going to waltz through right again, but I do like the over. I talked to a coach that was on their staff last year, and I think I had even before I talked to him, I talked about the emotional presence of Cam Scatterbo and how he was such an emotional leader on that team. And I was asking about both. I said production from Cam, and then what about the emotional leadership? And he was like, the running back room is going to be awesome. He said, we think we'll be fine at running back. It's not going to be one player like it was last year, but they're not going to miss him as much production-wise. And as far as Sam Leavitt, this coach raved about him being the leader, early to practice, grabbing guys, if you need to get in some guy's face, he's not afraid. And him being able to improve any more, kind of like Bud was talking about, that the scouts are seeing. So I feel even better about their quarterback. So I'm going over 2. I had him at 9-3, which is it kind of goes to, can you replicate? Can you get to 10? That seems a lot, but I had him at 9-3, so I have him over 8.5.
Are there any surefire losses on this schedule?
It's the Big 12. I don't think there's any surefire loss for any team unless you tell me they've quit.
Okay.
But there's also the same thing goes. There aren't that, like, they're surefire wins, but like nothing on here would surprise me. Like if they slipped up, against Houston or TCU at home, I think they'll win those games. They'll be favored, but like, I'm not like, bam, they're just going to roll through there because it's the Big 12.
Can we take Joey Steffen's question at 11:21? I think it's a relevant point for the whole league.
Joey, the last 3 games, that one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I pointed out the West Virginia at Colorado, Arizona stretch. Were those last 3 games really in question, though, Bud? What about the previous 6? If you guaranteed me that Arizona State wins those last 3, I'm like, opening up and unloading on this win total. Every game in the Big 12, unless you tell me a team has like definitively quit or has lost their quarterback, is in question. There are no locks in the Big 12, guys. The difference in talent on these rosters is just not that big. They're all really similar. Very few of them have like multiple high-level NFL players. So a lot of this comes down to like matchups, motivation, and health. So yes, those 3 games they'll be favored in, but they're not like locks to win them. That's why I kind of thought there was like a little bit of a late season edge there with how some of those seasons could go. I'd rather play those teams late than early. I think.
Well, it's so funny because you said it and it made so much sense about the tempo. One of the things as I was going through this conference, and again, we'll get to West Virginia specifically on Wednesday, but I was putting forth, and again, this could be, could be wrong about this, but I was putting forth the West Virginia later in the year might really actually be in a rhythm. The first year coach later in the season, but great point about the tempo and the legs. Like that's the other side of it. I mean, you could call this either way. You could tell me Rich Rod.
The defense does play a lot of snaps too. Like they might suck.
Yeah.
Like really bad by that point in the year.
Rich Rod might, take some lumps early. Offense might be a little clunky, but then they hit a rhythm and they get hot and they go. I could sort of see that one either way. So I'm rethinking looking at that. I think it's disappointing if you're an Arizona State fan and you want to nitpick this. The games that I do think you are going to be the most heavily favored in conference play, Houston, West Virginia, Arizona, they're all at home. We've talked about this before, that sometimes you want to have your sometimes you want to have the coin flip games at home and the games you're going to be able to win on the road. But still, that middle stretch will definitely be where this thing's decided. At least, can they enter the final stretch ready to go? For the record, my lean here is over at FanDuel Sportsbook with that little plus 104 on over 8.5. I like that too. But I see something along the lines of 3-0 in conference play, 6-3, 3-0 in non-con, 6-3 in conference play. We're probably breaking out a Rubik's Cube to figure out the tiebreakers on whether or not Arizona State gets back to Dallas because of, whatever happens. But love that. And you mentioned the running back room, Danny. One of the last Kanyes we stand for. Kanye Udo, is as a good player, right? So I remember when he stepped up, was it Bryson Daly missed a game and Kanye Udo had to really step up and kind of carry the run game a little bit for Army in the middle of last season. So give me the Sun Devils over. I kind of like where we're at here. How many games are going to win this fall? Is the question for a head coach who I think just saw The Wolf of Wall Street like a week ago. Dave Miranda of a lot. I would say that as a principal, if I'm just to be a consultant for coaches out there, if you're going to be referencing a Wolf of Wall Street scene at a press conference, it should really only be the McConaughey improvised beating your chest scene. I don't think there's a lot more scenes that you want to call on right there, but he's a one of a kind coach. Now the win total for the Baylor Bears this year is set at 7.5, over -105, under -114. We of course have that huge game that will be a tone setter for both the Baylor Bears and the Auburn Tigers. Then it doesn't get any easier. You're going to play at SMU before you dive into conference play on the other side of your FCS Samford. So, Bud, how are we starting to pick apart? I mean, Sawyer Robertson, we haven't mentioned his name recently, but we have long been a Sawyer Robertson podcast. They bring back a ton from last year's squad. What's our confidence that they're going to be able to take that step forward that Baylor's really hoping for?
Yeah, I don't have enormous confidence that they're going to take a big step up. We liked Baylor last year once Sawyer started playing pretty well. They probably should have won the Colorado game if the kid doesn't literally slip down there. I just don't know if I see tremendous upside in the win total here. I think this is pegged mostly right. I mean, Auburn at home at SMU. I don't want to do the thing where I just read the schedule, and they do bring back a lot. I don't know if I love some of the roadies here for them, honestly. Like at Arizona, at Cincy, I think Cincinnati would be an improved football team. At TCU, at Oklahoma State. Like Oklahoma State may swing this thing. Like if Oklahoma State is good and improved and they clip you early, I mean, they beat Arkansas last year before they fell apart, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then this is really hard to go over. I'm going to go under like slightly, but this is not one that I want to bet. I think they have it pegged pretty well.
Similar mindset, not quite as confident on this one. I'm on the over in large part because of the Sawyer Robinson impact. Like you wonder if he would have been starting all season long had they got that. And even when he took over, they had a couple games, maybe swing the other way if he's a little bit more comfortable. Also, the defense just has to get better. I mean, Dave Aranda is a defensive-minded coach. The thing that really scares me about this might be one of my favorite schedules because it is tough. They play 11 Power 4 teams, which I love, but it also scares me because not only playing tougher opponents, you don't really have those guaranteed wins, but also from the grind of the schedule, not really getting a breather week where you can play a lot of backups. That concerns me. So I'm on the over, not by a ton, but I like where they stand. I think they take a step in the right direction. The way they finished last season, rattling off those 5 or 6 wins in a row, I like that, but the schedule is probably the one thing that keeps me a little bit cautious.
Yeah. You don't play Texas Tech. I mean, it's so funny. I guess you can't do a easier or harder schedule draw in the Big 12 just because the margins are so thin. You don't have Texas Tech, you don't have Iowa State, but you still do have your Arizona State, you still have your TCU, you still have your Kansas State. Those the end of that schedule makes me a little bit cautious. I think I'm lean under here, but my lean under is also maybe tipping my hand at what I might see from some of those teams on the back half of the schedule. Certainly expecting a big jump forward from Utah, and then maybe that finale. I saw somebody in the tailgate mention earlier that we've got a couple wild cards in the Big 12, and if the Houston Cougars do end up bouncing back, that could be a game, that could be a team that really swings this thing. In addition to, Bud, your call of Oklahoma State.
The other thing that kind of makes me nervous, and you guys are both on the under, so if they start the season 1-3, which they had a slow start last year, but they were able to switch quarterbacks, you just wonder, does that bring back a lot of question marks that were just there about Dave Aranda? does that potentially lead to a fractured locker room? Guys start going through the motions, and that would concern me. So I think the first month obviously is critical for them, but I'm still going to stay on the over. But that's something to keep an eye out for, that quit factor.
Danny, there's a 2-4 going into the bye week.
Right.
Without having to, play really, really poorly. You could just catch some bad breaks, and all of a sudden you're sitting there. Your only wins are Samford and Oklahoma State. It's October 11th, and the fan base is getting a little antsy. You got a big road trip coming up to start the second half of the season. I love setting unnecessary urgency on a team. All right, so here we go. If Baylor starts 0-2, the season's over. Okay. That's it. If they can't get off to at least win one of those games, things are going to get really, really dicey by mid-October. But I think that those different possibilities also include, what if they're 5-1? What if they're 5-1 going into the off week? And then all of a sudden you're starting to think about Dave Aranda, who has mentioned to people, I think that this team can repeat the success of that 21 season where they're playing for the Big 12 championship. So a lot of exciting stuff for Baylor. I'm again, my lean here is under, but man, are we all on the lean here? It seems good bet is that Baylor does not show up at the win total locks at the end of the series. Does that sound right?
I would agree.
Yeah. Pretty spot on number at FanDuel Sportsbook of 7.5. Well, coming up on the other side, we turn our attention to another team that's very, very tough to peg, BYU, given the turnover at quarterback. Cincinnati, Scott Satterfield needs to find something going into 2025. Colorado, Houston, Iowa State, and more.
Next.
The crowd loves champions. Gladiator 2 is an epic spectacle. To amuse you is my only wish.
The glory is yours, not mine.
Very good. Gladiator 2, rated R, now streaming on Paramount Plus.
Count them up. I don't even know how to count them up. I mean, I'm not great at math. We've gone over this extensively, but the BYU Cougars have an over-under win total at FanDuel Sportsbook. Pulled this last night at 6.5, over -118, under -104. Depending on what kind of data you're using, if you froze all of your projections a month and a half ago, you'd see this 6.5 and you'd be like, oh my gosh, that's way too low. Hammer the over. Then Jake Retzlaff ends up transferring to Tulane, honor code violations and the like. I mean, Bud, we were talking about adjustments and news at the top of the show right here. How does Retzlaff's absence impact your projections for BYU?
Yeah, I mean, so BYU was like plus money under 7.5 before the Retzlaff stuff came out. So obviously it dropped at about a win, which I think it creates a very slight buying opportunity here for me. I'm going to go ahead and go over, mainly because I don't think Retzlaff was that good. I think he was fine, but I don't think he was certainly not a top third quarterback in the Big 12. And I think you could also make an argument that he was not a top half quarterback in the Big 12. They get Mekhi Hillstead, who came over from Utah State. I definitely don't think he's a top half quarterback in the Big 12, but he is at least somebody who's like played college football before. And BYU is not typically asking like that much of their quarterback. They should be fairly solid to get on defense. But man, I do like the schedule here quite a bit. Stanford is actually an underdog to Hawaii now to open the year. Like they're very much in the running as the worst P5 team by a good bit. Portland State should be a win. East Carolina, I think, will be an improved football team, but you're coming off a bye there. And like, really, if you're a Power 5 team or Power 4 team that spends real money, like we know BYU does, they have actual NIL, your bodies just should be better than what East Carolina's running out there. I think it's very important that they get at least 5 wins on the left side of this column. So that would be Portland State, Stanford, at ECU, at Colorado, West Virginia, at Arizona. I think if you're 4-2 in that stretch, you're going to have a hard time getting to that 7th win. But I do like getting UCF at home in the cold to end the year. Probably not a trip that the Knights are super looking forward to playing there, I would think, on Thanksgiving in Provo. Can you get one in the Utah, at Iowa State, at Texas Tech, host TCU, at Cincinnati stretch? Like that could certainly be an 0-5 if you have real QB problems, but I think you can get one there. So I'm going to go ahead and go over for this BYU team.
Yeah, much like you, I try to fade the easy bet. Like the easy bet is as soon as you lose Retzlaff, season's done. The season's over. And like you, I thought he was good. The story was fun, but I do think that kind of made the lore of his actual play better than it actually was. So I don't think the loss is going to be too significant. That's without seeing these guys that are coming in behind him. But I think Kalani Sitake's a really good football coach. I think this is one where you do have some of the age and development advantage over, a lot of teams because, of the way the setup is with getting older players on your team. So I'm on the over, not by a ton, but, and then like the Colorado game is a good example. Like they dominated that game physically with Shedeur and with Travis Hunter last year, the bowl game. And I know bowl games are kind of an outliers and they did have Jake Retzlaff, but I think they're a physical team that kind of it translates to more times than not being able to mask potential issues at quarterback.
West Virginia and UCF hauling their ass out to Provo. That's that is tough, and that is a good advantage for BYU. If you are a student at the School of Regression, BYU did pull some games, pulled some games out in unique ways on their way to 11 wins. But even if you do the regression monster coming back, 11 wins still could bring you back to 7.5 or 7-5. So I think that as I was going through with my win-loss toss-ups, I gave them the loss at Texas Tech. BYU, Utah probably, but it's the Holy War, so you never know with rivalry games. I could really see this being an 8-4 team. So at 6.5, I think I'm with y'all. I'm going to be jumping in on trying to buy on bad news and look at a BYU team that might take a step back defensively, but I still think that they've got some good coaching. And like you said, Danny, they've still got big bodies that should be able to win at the line of scrimmage. If they can stack the wins early, and if they can avoid a kind of slip up against an ECU or at ECU at Arizona, if you get those wins, then I think we should be pacing towards going over 6.5, even if you have to lay the -118. -118 ain't bad. We're going to deal with way more ridiculous prices than -118 by the end of the next month. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think that BYU over has to be the play. How many games are going to win this fall? Loose connection here, but the great Barton Simmons, of course, has the voice in the intro here. The team he was talking about when he said he didn't see 8 wins on the schedule was the Louisville Cardinals. Now, it was very prescient because it was the year that the team absolutely quit, and they were historically bad, failing to even cover the spread by 3 touchdowns at the end of it. The hire the next season was Scott Satterfield. He overshot expectations, then wasn't able to replicate him. Well, now the expectations are just to make a daggum bowl. The Cincinnati Bearcats going into 2025 with a win total at FanDuel Sportsbook of 6.5, over +108, under -132. Danny, what are we doing with the Bearcats?
I think this is one of those middle of the pack Big 12 teams, which is probably going to be 5, 6, or 7 wins. And if I was going to go with one of them, I'll go right down the middle and say 6-6 when I went through it. I think we all were kind of looking at the Satterfield hire as kind of like, all right, he's resetting the clock. It didn't really infuse a ton of confidence in. It
was like Holgorsen going to Houston when he got out from West Virginia and just kind of did a nice little sidestep, which is good to reset the clock, but.
And I remember I like Brennan Sorsby a lot. I think he's pretty good. If he takes a big step forward, maybe they could be that surprise team. But I think this is a middle of the pack Big 12 team, which is why, again, it's more of a lean, not a lock, because it wouldn't be shocked if they're 7-5. I don't think they'll be the surprise team that would really shock the upside. So I'm going 6-6, which would be just under.
I went over here.
All right, let's go.
I think this is the team that probably would have had different fortunes last year had they not lost like 3 of their top 4 defensive linemen by week 2. No Big 12 team has good backup defensive linemen, right? Most of them don't have good starters. They had some decent starters who they just lost. And those guys, I think, will be much better in the defensive front this year. I like Sorsby as a quarterback, especially when he's throwing off-run action. Offensive line should be okay. I think they've upgraded their speed at receiver like pretty well. Just looking at this, I mean they got some guys who can really run now. So that's kind of, if you watch the better Satterfield teams at Louisville, they would run the ball and throw play action over the top. I also think the schedule is fairly favorable, right? Because people are very high on Nebraska, and I'm also somewhat high on Nebraska. But I think I want to play Nebraska week 1 if I can. New defense they're breaking in, right? Cincinnati brings back a lot. I know Nebraska's got the one offensive line injury they're still kind of monitoring. Don't know if that kid's going to be back in time. That's a neutral site ball game. They're like a touchdown or less favorite for a reason in that one. Like, that's not a 14-point spread. That's actually one of those week 1 games that you kind of got to watch out for. Bowling Green, obviously a lot of turnover. Northwestern State, if you lose that, why are we having this discussion at all? Like, at Kansas, not an easy place to play. Well-coached football team, but is Daniels going to be healthy? Don't know. Certainly not one of the harder places to play. Host an Iowa State team that I'm very down on. Host UCF, I like that. At Oklahoma State, I mean, there are definitely harder places to play. Host Baylor, I hate the at Utah game, 100%. Like, that's really tough there.
Big fat right. L. Don't give me no toss up on that. You're seeing this Cincinnati team.
You're probably not winning that one.
Yeah.
Although they did go to BYU when BYU was okay, 2 years ago, and they got the win, I think, in the first year in the league. Arizona
they lost a close game. It was 35-27 at BYU 2 years ago.
BYU came back on them? Okay. I'm trying to – yeah, okay, that makes sense. And then Arizona and BYU, again, not the hardest. So I can see this team going 8-4.
I like what you said, Danny. It feels like a 5. It feels like a 6. It feels like a 7. If you're going to give me an option, I could see – they went 5-7 a year ago. But to your point, they started 5-2. Like, what happens when a team starts 5-2 and finishes 5-7? It almost always comes down to injury issues.
And the Pitt game, like, they totally wore down on the D line. They had nobody left. Like their guys were just like standing up playing patty cake on pass rush. Those are backups asking to play 60, 70 snaps.
Yeah. So there is definitely room for me to acknowledge they were better than 5-7 a year ago. They were a team capable of being in a bowl game. But I think that as we look at this schedule, and as I am actually thinking that the Kansas game is going to be really tough, as I'm looking at it and I'm thinking no chance. I mean, Baylor could be an opponent where I'm going to feel a lot more confident taking Baylor and everything that they bring back than I am with Cincinnati. I mean, I love we still have the Godfather in our life, but we got to keep him healthy. Yeah. We got to keep that whole defense healthy. And then if you get to the end of the season, those games that might be a little toss up in nature, like a BYU, those are going to be ones where you really hope that you are that you really hope that you are tracking towards a bowl game and you're not having to deal with any kind of quit factor. I'll give them an L at TCU at the end of the year. So slightly into the under for me. I think 5-7, 6-6, more likely than 7-5 or 8-4 as we're looking ahead to the season. Again, Cincinnati's win total at 6.5 over +108, under -132.
Count them up.
All right, now we're here. The Colorado Buffs over under win total of 5.5 over -115, under -105. As we said at the top of the show, whatever happens at this press conference that is set to be around 1 p.m. Eastern time, 11 Mountain time, that could impact the market, could impact the projections. Our hope is that we are going to get some positive news about Deion Sanders and his availability this year. So let's just talk about the team. Bud, what do we see? We got a Caden Salter. We got a Juju Lewis. We got some okay defensive lines. We got a huge absence of receptions because it wasn't just Travis Hunter. It was like all of their good receivers are now in the NFL, either with contracts or trying to make a team. So how do we sort of look at the Buffs and imagine what they're going to look like?
I mean, I don't know that I love Colorado in any of their road games. I don't know that the gap between them and Georgia Tech is actually all that big, but I think that's a game you would probably play with a couple games under your belt. You prefer because I think Brent Key will have those guys ready. Haynes King, I think it's a very good college quarterback. So that's certainly not an easy one. Do we think Wyoming's just going to be dreadful again? I have a feeling they'll bounce back some.
Come on. No, Colorado gets that win. Okay.
Do they? Like,
yes.
If you look at like the last like 5-year sample for Wyoming, I don't think Colorado's a lock over like the Colorado team without Travis and Shador is a lock over what Wyoming is typically. Like Wyoming was kind of a weird outlier last year with how bad they were.
I think Wyoming's drop-off might be indicative of the gap that we continue to see from a conference like the Mountain West and the power conferences in sort of the modern era.
That's fair. And there's a reason that Colorado will be favored in that game. I don't think that Wyoming is getting that game. I don't think that's just some lock where they're going to win by 40.
Oh, sure. That's fine. But I think they're a double-digit favorite in that game.
Yeah, probably. As long as one of the two quarterbacks are good. I just think like the road schedule here is really tough. I'm concerned with some of the players they lost in spring, like two other teams who are like that. And I don't think they did a great job of backfilling that. They lost an offensive lineman, they lost a DB. Just some dudes that I know schools are pretty happy to get. So I'm going to go under here slightly. It's not one that I think you need to be slamming. This got bet already a full win under. So this was like 6.5 even money not that long ago. So again, like how much juice do you think is left on this under? But I'll go under very slightly since we got to pick every single one.
Under. I think for all the reasons you guys mentioned, the loss of production on the offensive side of the ball, the question marks at quarterback, I mean, the different style of play, they're going to have a completely different identity.
Mm-hmm.
If you listen to their coaches and what they want to do, they're going to try to be a run-heavy team. And I guess it does help to have one of the better tackles in the country in Jordan Seaton coming back, and you're going to try to make that your strength. And I would tend to lean it's probably going to be Caden Salter in that role, and you can work in Juju, kind of sprinkle him in with packages. But I also wonder, I think already it's challenging in the really transfer portal heavy teams when you have so much turnover to kind of keep the positive mojo going if things aren't going well. And I think you kind of become a front-running team where if you're winning, it's good. But if you're losing, I think it could kind of come off the rails. And we saw a little bit of that 2 years ago with really strong alphas in the locker room. Without those, I would say I have to go under.
4-8 2 years ago might have been one of the worst possible records given the talent on that roster.
Right.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
I mean, we've already relitigated. They weren't really one score losses. They were backdoor covers. I think that 9-4 is probably close to average. I know we've had a couple games that they got some breaks there. I feel like this team's floor might be 3-9. I feel like this team's ceiling might be 8-4. Like this is just such a lower ceiling that we're talking about. So when you split the difference there, I'm right there at a 5.5, kind of on where I'm spot on. And I think that this is going to swing on how they do in those first two power conference games. I'm going to give them Delaware, though the tailgate, man, the tailgate's not being nice today. Tailgate saying you got to watch out for the Delaware trap game. Okay. The Blue Hens, if they pulled that off, that would be no bueno. But I think Georgia
FBS Blue Hens, right?
The what?
FBS Blue Hens.
That's right. Good call.
Because I covered this team when they were in the FCS playoffs. They're one of the teams that made the jump this year, right?
Yep. Conference USA this year.
Yeah.
Yep. Georgia Tech and Houston, the power conference games right there. I think they swing that. Those might be coin flip games. You lose them both, things could get a little dicey. I do not like the Arizona State, Kansas State to conclude, or a road trip to West Virginia. I know this was the game, Bud, where I was talking about you might want to play West Virginia early. Now, you made a great point about the depth, but what happens if season's a little bit rickety? You just need that last win. But guess what? Rich Rod's finally got the offense humming. You've got to travel all the way out to Morgantown and be able to get that victory. I'm not going to bet this. I'm not going to throw this on the win total locks. Kind of spot on. But to me, Georgia Tech and Houston would be one where by the end of week 3, I feel like I'm going to know whether this one's going under or over.
So Question for you. If Deion announces today in an hour and a half that he is either stepping down or taking like a leave of absence type thing, does this impact your opinion on this win total?
Yes. Because I'm putting so much
Under or over?
Under. Because I'm putting so much emphasis on Georgia Tech and Houston, games at the beginning of the season. I think the disruption to the preparation process would be enough to go from me being like, I'm spot on, I'm right with you, FanDuel, to thinking that now that would be an impact. And look, my prediction would be that the market would move too, so I might lose it and not be able to take it with a lot of value. But yeah, in terms of my prediction, it would, just because I think Georgia Tech and Houston are key to this.
Like if the market reacted very strongly to this,
jump back in, baby.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like Deion doesn't call plays. His in-game stuff is not always innovative. So I think you could find some value on Colorado if he wasn't the head coach, if the market overreacts.
What a loaded statement. I appreciate that. All right. Yeah. Anything else on the Buffs? All right. How many games y'all gonna win this fall? All right. We kind of been teasing it out. So Danny, I'm gonna let you get first crack here. There's a head coach. We've got our favorites. The Houston Cougars going into 2025, looking for a little bit of a bounce back. Over under win total at FanDuel Sportsbook of 5.5. They certainly see a little bit of a bounce back from 4-8, because that 5.5 is juiced -188 to the over, under +152. As you look at the team, Connor Wegman, what in the schedule, how do you think this ends up playing out?
So I've got this one over. I've been burned by the Connor Wegman hype before, but I do think this is one of those situations where you get somebody who's probably at the level where they should be playing, and it's not a different level, but it's different defenses. I'm a big believer in Willie Fritz too, that this team is going to make big strides in year two. Even last season, yes, you saw some ugly games, but you also saw some surprise upsets where you're like, wait a second, Houston beat that team. They beat Kansas State.
They beat Utah and Kansas State.
Right.
Fever dream.
And like, as much as those teams didn't have years we thought, they still were pretty good football teams. So I'm buying in on Houston to take a big step forward. I think the schedule is pretty manageable, where they don't play the tougher teams. They don't play Kansas State. They get Arizona State and Texas Tech. Those are the two toughest opponents. They split them, one home, one on the road. I like this team. Baylor at the end of the year, who knows how that one goes, but if I only have to get to 5.5, I was pretty over it. I'm more, this would be the team, like if you said who could be the Arizona State, like kind of come out of nowhere, nobody's picking them. I'm not picking that, but I do feel pretty convicted that they're going to go over the total.
Yeah, I'm with you there, maybe with slightly less conviction, Danny, but one of my main concerns I had for this team, after I saw that Connor Wegman actually got in shape, which does matter to me, was the secondary. And yet I looked at this schedule and I'm thinking, how many games does a weak secondary really potentially going to get exploited here? Stephen F. Austin, probably not. Rice is running a brand new triple option scheme, which is pretty cool to go watch. They ran it at Davidson up by Chip last year. Colorado, again, I don't profile them as like a top 2/3 passing team in the P4 this year. Oregon State obviously would have, if they were in the P4, one of the worst passing offenses. Texas Tech has a chance to drop like 50 on you because they spread it around, they chuck it a bunch, and I think your third and fourth corners probably don't cover them all that well. Oklahoma State's a bit of an unknown for me there. We don't know what the offense is going to look like. Arizona, probably like still bottom half of P4 in passing, type offense, but maybe not dreadful. Arizona State probably has a chance to light you up. Leavitt's pretty good. West Virginia, don't really profile them as a team that can chuck it around well. UCF, kind of the same thing. TCU could light you up. Baylor could light you up. I like that you get all of the bad throwing teams or potentially bad throwing teams in the Big 12 if your weakness, I think, is the secondary. And so maybe your weakness is mitigated a bit. I'll go over.
And they lose some defensive linemen too. Like what's a way to have a good pass defense? You give a lockdown secondary, you have a really good pass rush. I know they lose a lot of production on the defensive line as well. A defense that just like held them in games. There were multiple conference games where Houston did not score a touchdown last year. Mm-hmm. In terms of improvement, then I think that we are all predicting a step forward for that team offensively. but they're gonna, man. Do you know what happened, Danny? I did it just like you did. I did it blind. I'm just sitting there. I'm just counting it up, and I feel like I'm gonna fudge the numbers. I feel like I'm cheating. I just want this to be an over so badly. I think it's spot on. I mean, what are you gonna do with? Do you think that Houston at Oregon State is a lock win for Houston?
No, but I gave him a W.
Yeah. And then
that was one of the ones where I really think could determine kind of feels like a must-win game if you want to go over this to kind of carry that momentum into the Texas Tech game at home, where that would be potentially undefeated Houston playing against a top 10 Texas Tech team, potentially. And that, I don't know. I think they could carry in that, maybe pull off one of the surprise upsets of the season. But then, I don't trust them because it's the Big 12. They could lose the following week with a letdown game against Oklahoma State. But I do think they win that game, but it wasn't an automatic lock by any means.
Yeah, let's see what this ends up looking like. A lot of toss. I got Colorado at Oregon State, at Oklahoma State, Arizona, West Virginia, at UCF. I got games that I want to be able to give them. Just toss up city over here for Houston. My emotion, my heart says that we should be going over, but I am 100% not going to lay the minus 188. So I'll root for this along the way. How many games are going to win this fall? Wrapping things up with Iowa State. The Cyclones made it to the Big 12 title game last year, and they do have their quarterback back as well with Rocco Becht, but plenty to replace around him on the offensive side after some, having Matt Campbell's name loosely connected to a couple other jobs. He reaffirms his commitment. So as we're looking ahead, Bud, what are you going to do with the Iowa State Cyclones coming off that 11-win season? Over under win total at FanDuel Sportsbook set at 7.5 plus 114 to the over, minus 140 to the under.
Yeah, I'm going to bet this under. I think this is a good football team, but one that I do think has a bit of a tricky schedule. A lot of questions about some of the teams on this schedule. But to me, man, you lost some real studs at receiver. And look, maybe I'll lose money on this. Cool. But I'm going to make Iowa State prove that you can replace those studs with the level you recruit. I don't think they can. I like Rocco Becht. I think he's a top half quarterback in the Big 12. I don't think he is big time prospect can just drag a team on his back if they don't have nice pieces around him. And while I think the pieces around him might be nice, they're certainly not as nice as they were last year. And I'll kind of believe this idea that they're going to be much better with the run game, because O-line improvements, back improvements, et cetera, than they were last year. I'll kind of believe it when I see it. So I am going to go ahead and take the under here with the Cyclones.
Gosh, I wanted to go over, and I'm almost, because with the over, I had them going 2-2 in the first month.
So losing, and what are you doing in Ireland?
I have them losing. I'm a little more bullish on Kansas State and Avery
I'm worried
Johnson.
about that one for my under, by the way.
Because that's the problem. The game in Ireland, you don't know.
Right. But I am slightly more bullish on Kansas State than Iowa State this year. So I would probably say that's why I gave them 2-2 through the first month. And then in order to get there, you kind of have to rattle off the Arizona, Cincinnati, Colorado, BYU stretch, which they probably should. But is there a slip up in there? Could BYU, catch them? Wouldn't surprise me. And then I had them losing to Arizona State and TCU, beating Kansas, Oklahoma State. I had them over at 8. Losing 2 1,000-yard receivers is a huge deal.
Yeah, Higgins
and as much as I like Rocco Becht, he had really good weapons on the outside. But the reason why I was leaning over from a value perspective, getting plus money on the over, and then kind of a belief in Matt Campbell and an even league to kind of either out effort teams that might have given up or, getting some situational, plays where they get the best of the opponent and get those wins. But I do feel it's plus money for a reason. If you wanted a little bit of value, I'd say, yeah, go ahead and take the over. And I went over, but not with a lot of conviction.
The worry I have in that opening ball game is this from a week ago. Yeah, July 22nd. Kansas State football lineman George Fitzpatrick, this is their projected starting left tackle, transfer from Ohio State, continues recovery from medical incident. Statement, George had a medical situation to which the training staff quickly responded. He's improved every day, and we appreciate all who have cared for and supported him as he continues to recover. It was a medical emergency during summer workouts, according to the Topeka Capital Journal, and there is no mention of when he's going to return. So that doesn't mean he's not going to return to be back for that game, but typically I find that schools, when they're optimistic a guy's going to return fast, they typically say something about it. So a situation worth monitoring for sure, because that line lost a bunch.
Do you know how many times Iowa State football in 133 years of football have won double-digit games?
4.
Once. It was last season, going 11-3. Do you know how many times they've had double-digit losses?
In how many years?
133 years of Iowa State football.
29.
No, it's actually only it's only about.
Oh, they haven't. A lot of those years only played like 8 games, so I'm done.
Sure. But my point is, from a narrative perspective, will Iowa State be able to back up the winningest season in Iowa State football history? I feel mean that this is sort of the like where I've landed for a coach in Matt Campbell, who I've always thought has done a really good job. Like, what are the chances that this team is still in the hunt for the Big 12 title? In general, Iowa State can run it up and peak, and then there's going to be a little bit of a step back. Now, I think there's a high floor for this team, but in the win-loss toss-up analysis, I had 9 toss-ups. I think they're pretty close to a lot of these teams, and that's going to be tough. I think, of course, South Dakota State, Arkansas State, I gave them Arizona at home. So boom, 1, 2, 3, you should be able to get it. But if things could go sideways after that, as I've got literally the rest of the schedule sort of falling into my toss-up range. So I am lean under to something a little bit closer to 7-5, just because it seems difficult for Iowa State there. South Dakota, we're going to take South Dakota against the spread, right?
Coming off the trip to Dublin and Iowa on deck.
Hawk on deck.
Yeah.
I feel like I've watched a lot of Iowa State like week 2 games where they're just doing spring game playbook. It'll be Carson Hansen gets out there, scores a touchdown on the opening drive, and then we're just running halfback dive the rest of the way. Oh yeah, and Joey in the tailgate saying and Arkansas State. Well, if you want to do and Arkansas State as well,
yeah.
I haven't run my numbers on Butch Jones' squad, but
I think we need to run the numbers on, like, does Arkansas State give a damn at all about playing non-conference games? I remember last year, I think we were live betting this. Like, guys, they don't. Yeah, it was 52-7 last year. Arkansas State did not exactly seem to care about that ball game based on some of the guys who did and did not play, and maybe just that was like a take the check, get back to the bus, don't get hurt.
If I was a coach, I think I would also use that as coaching. Like, let your team go out there and just get hammered. And now it's like, now we're going to get their attention, get them locked in with all the coaching points we need. Okay. So we are pretty close. Does anybody feel strong about this? I'm on the lean under, but it's not so strong.
I mean, I don't feel crazy strong about any of these Big 12 ones.
Yes, 100%.
They're all so close to me.
All right. So that is the first half, the first 8 teams of the 16-team Big 12. That means that on Wednesday, we'll be hitting Kansas State, Oklahoma State, TCU, Texas Tech, UCF, Utah, and West Virginia. Also, just go ahead and just going to get on your radar here. Our Tuesdays on CBS Sports Network are going to be getting back going. Noon Eastern time is going to be the time for that. At the beginning of the season, we're just going to be giving you some good season preview content. Then, of course, in the year, a little bit of a focus on the Big Ten, giving you those Big Ten big game breakdowns. Very fired up. It is mid-season form here on the Cover 3 podcast. I know we got to get out of here, but any final takeaways on Vegas? Any lasting thoughts? I guess everybody got home okay. Good to see everyone here. Tom,
I changed the red eye, which was a mistake. I'm still dragging today because of the red eye. And then I met my boys my high school buddies. So that was
Daytona?
another long night. So I'm still dragging a little bit. I said I would recover by Monday. I might adjust that till tomorrow. I'll be fully recovered. But yeah, it was a blast. I love it. I don't think we're going back anytime soon. The Big Ten's not going any back, but I would vote for it. I know the coaches wouldn't. Thought it was great.
I thought it was good. I mean, you definitely feel disconnected in the space, right? It's like, okay, you're there, but you're just in your own room because it's not like I certainly like the city of Vegas a lot more than Indy, but I kind of like the Indy venue better.
I thought that we got selfishly, I mean, whatever, we're 67 minutes in. I thought we got some better attitudes from the coaches because of where we were. I think that if we were picking them straight off of the podium when they're getting in their breakout rooms, when they were in the big room, in the ballroom, I think that there's something about as they came down to our set, as they sat in the comfy chairs and kind of like had the little handheld mic. I mean, obviously there was the one coach who was waving it around like a magician, but I think that I think that there was stuff talking to people afterwards and seeing some of the other content. I was appreciative. I thought the Big Ten did a good job of, we got to talk to most of the people we wanted to talk to, and I felt like it was a good conversation. So I appreciated that.
Like every single coach who sits down appreciates your energy. Like your intro for each interview is really good. I think it's disarming. It's like, all right, cool. It's a podcast. Like, and they see other podcasts that are out there. I think probably more NFL space. Like there's not as many college ones that are doing this, but like, it's like, yeah, cool. Like, let's just chop it up a little bit. Right. I think that really helps. We
were excited. We had an incredible production crew, and it was great. A team effort, certainly, to bring everything to you. Those are all available. Everything that was on the CBS Sports Network show, even our interviews that were not on the CBS Sports Network show. I definitely point you to Nick Dawkins, the Penn State center, was one of our favorites. All that available on youtube.com/cover3. So come back on Wednesday. We'll knock out the rest of the Big 12 mailbag on Thursday. And you can follow him on Twitter at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow him at Danny Kanell. Follow me at Chip _Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.